Kabuki Quantum Fighter is one of those games that I remember reading about in my very first issue of Nintendo Power and thinking that it looked cool, but I just never saw it anywhere to rent and never got a chance to try it for myself. Well, here we are nearly 30 years later and I'm finally getting around to playing it for the first time. The story goes that in the year 2056, a computer virus has taken over Earth's defense system and could cause global annihilation. The fate of the planet rests with one man, Colonel Scott O'Connor, who's willing to undergo a dangerous procedure to convert his brainwaves to raw data and jack into Earth's defense grid Matrix style to stop the virus. The technology is experimental and no one knows what effects the transfer will have on his brainwaves or psyche, but Colonel O'Connor is well trained in body and spirits, so it should be okay. The gameplay consists of side-scrolling action where you take control of Colonel O'Connor inside the supercomputer. Once inside the machine, you can attack enemies with your hair for some reason. Okay, so the original Famicom version was technically based off the 1990 Japanese film The Legend of Champaign. In that version, the man transforms into a samurai ancestor when he enters the computer, but those references were removed for the international release of the game. Anyway, you can jump, swing your hair, as well as pick up special weapons to use throughout 6 stages inside the computer. You don't really find the weapons, the game just kinda gives them to you after each stage and you get ammo for them by finding computer chips along the way. So on the surface, this game looks pretty cool. The graphics are colorful and very well detailed, and some of the music is definitely on the upper end of the spectrum as far as NES soundtracks go. There's plenty of cool weapons to find along the way, and the storyline is certainly intriguing. However, I can't help but overlook the fact that it's really just a poor man's version of Ninja Gaiden 2, the Dark Sword of Chaos. Some of these stages look practically the same, and with the stage hazards, it's even more obvious. Why would there be beating hearts and rushing water in a computer mainframe anyway? These levels are also kind of short, but set up just awkwardly enough to require multiple playthroughs to figure out how to navigate your way through. I mentioned the stage hazards, and there are plenty of them. Rushing water, ice blocks, spikes, rotating platforms like giant lag screws, platforms to hang off of, platforms with conveyor belts on the top of them for some stupid reason, and enemies put in just the right spot to make the game completely unfair. They also like to put some of these platforms barely out of your character's max jumping range. Although the levels are very well detailed from a graphical standpoint, this presents a different challenge because it's not always clear where your character can or can't jump. Is this a platform that I can walk on, or is it just in the background? Who knows, and you won't find out until you try to jump on it and fall in the water. Same goes with enemies. There's some neat animated things going on in the background. Sometimes they just look cool, other times they do damage. Some of these jumps are precarious, and when you're hanging off a platform like this, it can be tricky and borderline frustrating getting your character to swing just right to catch the next platform. Then they usually throw an enemy in there just off screen for good measure. There's hardly ever a way to make it through without at least taking some damage. Also, the hair attack is cool and has a nice attack radius similar to Simon Belmont's whip or Ryu's sword, but it only works if you're standing. If you duck, you just do a weak little punch that barely has any reach. Unfortunately, a lot of times the enemy placement begs for a better crouching attack, and instead you're stuck dealing with this. Then there's the boss fights. Thankfully, they're nice enough to refill your life bar right before the boss fights at the end of each stage, but these bosses just sort of spaz all over the place. With these bosses, it's just brute force offense and hope you do enough damage to outlast your opponent. There's no real discernible pattern here. The special weapons aren't all that helpful either. Then when you do beat a boss, you get a cutscene and then onward to the next level, but this time they don't bother refilling your life bar at all. Deal with that, Kabuki. So, okay, it sounds like I'm being pretty harsh on this game. It's not all that bad, and I actually really like the futuristic storyline and the idea of downloading your entire brain into a computer to fight off viruses. That's some next level science fiction horror stuff, and probably even a little ahead of its time for 1990. The hair attack is certainly unique, and most of the music in this game is top notch, but but I'll just say buyer beware. Some of the platforming areas in this game may make even the most patient of gamers throw their controller in frustration. Thankfully, this game isn't super expensive and only seems to go for about 15 bucks or so on the open market. I definitely wouldn't pay any more for it than that though. Well, what did you think? Did you play this one at all growing up, or maybe discover it recently? As always, thank you for watching. Please don't text and drive, and I'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.